This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, we get to interview Colin Exelby. He's a certified financial planner professional with over 20 years of experience providing financial planning for business owners and their families. It just makes sense. He owns the financial advisory practice, Celestial Wealth Management, and runs the YouTube channel, See the Forest Through the Trees, providing advice virtually to clients all over the country. Welcome, Colin, to the show.
Thank you very much, Travis. Good to be here. Love what you're doing here. Love the education, love the balance on the show. So happy to contribute.
Absolutely, man. You know, you were virtual before it was cool. And so let's talk about how you got here. Like, how did you get to go virtual? You told me a little bit about that story in the pre-show, but I'd love to know, for you to share with the audience of what you are doing and how that has brought you such success and growth. So let's start there. Like, how'd you get into the swap?
Sure. So I got into the business back in 2000. I guess that was taking it back to the beginning of getting into the business. I worked for a large Wall Street investment bank in the middle of the dot-com blow up and 9/11, 22 years old, out of school, finance and economics degrees. And I probably should have had a psychology degree to deal with that time frame as well. But I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later in the discussion. But started there and spent about 10 years at the bank building up a client list. Shortly after the financial crisis in 2010, I left and started Celestial Wealth Management as an RIA, as a independent advisor. And I was working with clients mostly here in the Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania area, but people had started spreading out across the country. And I started having more and more meetings through Skype. I'm sure we talked about Skype a little bit earlier. And that was kind of the beginnings of virtual financial advising and virtual discussions and things like that. So, I was using that with some clients that had moved overseas and had been around the country and kind of said, this is kind of nice being able to do this. This is really efficient. But I still had the normal business of, people coming into the office and driving up to the Baltimore area. And in 2016, I had a client I've been working with for a while. And he said, Colin, I love you. I love coming to these meetings. We get to talk about things. We get to BS for a little bit, hang out, but it takes me an hour to get there. I got to find parking. We spend an hour and a half together. Then I'm hitting rush hour on the way back home. I'm stressed from driving and everything. And I just wish there was a way to do this easier. And it just got me thinking about what this is like for the client and the amount of stress that they get just in driving, finding the parking. Dealing with finances is already stressful for people. I'm sure if you put like a blood pressure thing on them, they'd be showing it going up as they're going into a meeting. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this to make people more comfortable. And so I started doing more and more of these meetings through Skype and Zoom as it came on right about that time frame. The client gets to sit in their own space where they're comfortable, in their office, in their living room, with their favorite beverage, whatever that might be. And we can sit here and discuss their finances in a hyper efficient way where it only takes an hour or less to kind of go through things, some more in-depth things, an hour and a half. But you don't have, like we were saying, all that travel back and forth all over the place. You're eliminating that, which frees up time for the client, number one, to do what they want to be doing, but also frees up me as an advisor to handle more business, to do more things, and also be able to spend more time with my family and friends and those that are around me.
This is so amazing. And I love your take on what you've done to get here. Like, you're an innovative guy who found a solution to a problem that you're seeing, likely not just one client, but several clients. I remember being on GoToMeeting in 2006 because I had a client in California and we needed to talk a bunch and it wasn't really worth our time to be flying back and forth. And it was so high tech, but looking back, like it was so clunky. Like it took forever to like share screen and can you see this? And I mean, we're dealing with Zoom. We're literally recording over Zoom right now. But wow, how things have just taken off.
Well, not to plug Zoom, but to your point, that was one of the things that really stood out was the ease of the client interface through Zoom compared to GoToMeeting and some of that stuff at that time, which everyone complained about. So how hard it was to actually get in the room and have it work. And Zoom was just a better technology at that time to make it easy for people who may not be as tech savvy as some others are to get on there and do it.
Yeah, exactly. I also chuckled about your dig there about the psychology degree. I think every advisor, when they get started, like they feel like they should be a therapist, like, right? And I've talked to several life planners, financial therapists on this show, and, even just had Rick Collar, release today or just a couple of days ago on the show as we're recording this here in October. We've been talking about these issues, the psychology behind this, but you're exactly right. Like there were so many issues that happened right there in the early 2000s that really put a lot of advisors either out of the business or in such a difficult spot to be helping their clients. So I'm glad you stuck it through, that you're here and you're able to help, your clients to have a better life. We talk about balance, and you have a great balance. You have a great sense of balance. What was it that really helped you come to terms with what balance is for you?
I think it was because in the few years leading up to that, in 2010, my first child was born. And as she was getting to 4 or 5 years old, the amount of things that my wife and I were doing, my wife works as well, to try to run the business, run the household, guide our daughter who's learning everything at the same time. And you're trying to find out how can you do all of this and grow the business at the same time. There's got to be better ways, more efficient ways to do things. And the only way to grow a business and not spend more and more of your time in the business is figure out ways to be more efficient.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. That's a big part of the productivity, the efficiencies with systems, with managing your time. And, the other side of this coin is growing your business while you're efficient, right? While you're being productive, so that you have the money, the resources to then hire, to support your practice. Now you're a solo practitioner, you're a solo advisor. You do have other virtual help, and you've built out a team that way in a virtual sense, which makes total sense based on what you're doing and how you want to provide service to your clients. Tell us, when it comes to hiring virtual help, what were some of the biggest pitfalls or some of the greatest successes you had doing that? I know a lot of advisors still struggle with this. They struggle with, I don't want to hire virtual. I want to do this. I want to have so much of the control here. And I get it. Like I have both virtual help and in-person help. And it just depends on what I need and who I need where. But let's talk about this. With being more efficient, a lot of times it means you've got to hire, out and do this virtually. Tell us a little bit about how that's worked for you.
Right. And I think that's an excellent place to take this, because if you are going to be a solo practitioner, which I am, I'm not part of a big group or a big team or anything like that. With employees, like what I realize is what I'm good at is providing advice, helping people, guiding people, not managing other people in an office, but I needed help. And the great thing is that I live in Maryland. There is talent all over this country and all over this world. And it doesn't have to be in the Towson area to work for me. I can find talent everywhere that wants to work on their terms when they're able to work, that works with my business. So in building out the team, it didn't happen overnight. It was kind of years in the making of talking to different people. How did they do it? Going to find other businesses that were virtual and learning from them about, where are their teams located? How do you deal with different time zones? There's some books out there on hiring VAs. It was kind of like, let's get the basic knowledge first, figure out how this stuff works, and then start reaching out through the different media platforms, whether it was Upwork, whether it was Fiverr, whether it was LinkedIn, and saying, hey, I'm looking for this. Who do you know that is qualified and able to help? And people would, I was just amazed at the responses that I would get and how high quality a lot of the responses were. And so it wasn't like I was sifting through people and trying to find one person that could actually do this stuff. I had like 6, 7, 8 people that I couldn't figure out how to hire them because they were so good. That is a great problem to have, but it is a problem, right? When you have like too many qualified candidates, and then you're sitting here saying, okay, well, what is the best thing to do? And I did have a couple where I've had to change, whether it was a issue with time zones, because that's definitely something that impacts this, or it was the specialties were off. But the going through the process, I think, was just really good for me. And I was able to find people that can really help run this business so that I am not doing everything.
And that's the key. I mean, one of the biggest myths of having balance is doing everything at the same time. You can't do everything, and you can't do it all at the same time. It just does not work. You got to pick the things that I call the work sweet spot that are most important, and delegate, automate, or delete everything else, right? So if you can delegate, it's just part of virtual delegation. What I have found personally to add on to this is that when someone's working virtually, I have to make our interaction communication more intentional. I have to make sure that it's on the calendar, or that we have a specific portal like Teams. I use Teams for all of my internal, my guys that are here, guys and gals, and then even people outside who are virtual. I have my own channel for each of them so that we can conduct that, or have my operations manager manage those interactions. So I know where it's at. We can keep track of things. Otherwise, it's easy sometimes in the virtual world for things to get lost if there's not, that sort of setup. Have you found that to be the same?
Yes, you have, like, systems are so important, and especially in this advisory world. And without the technology, like, this technology didn't exist 7 years ago, a lot of it, in order to do this sort of stuff. But the ability to chat with people anywhere, to have real-time updates to what is going on with certain tasks through the software. For the actual advisory business, I use Redtail, which I know a lot of advisors probably listening to this do use it. And I try to use it to its fullest capability. And, we're thinking about this in everything that is a repeatable task needs to have a system in place so that if somebody is gone for a month and had to hand it off, that somebody else would know how to execute it, is the way that I look at that. And so, like, you brought up about, like, what do you delegate? What do you do for yourself? I mean, that was one of the first things that I did, is look at every single task that I have to do and then say, what are the things that only I can do? What are the things that somebody can help out with? And what are the things that somebody else can completely do so that I don't need to be doing any of that stuff? And then figure out, how to delegate those tasks and use software to help do that. And Redtail is essentially my first VA, right? It's a technology VA, because everything is within that system. I don't know now how I would survive without Redtail. And I don't want to plug them too much here. We plugged Zoom earlier, but I mean, that's how essential Redtail is to this system. Is everything is in there. All the client notes are in there. They're all compliance and taken on there. All the CRM is on there. I can see how often I'm speaking to people, how often I'm emailing them, reaching out to them. I can see what my assistant is working on, how far they are along in the process. And then if something happens where we're not around, somebody can take over and run that, because they can see the system and what needs to be done in that task.
So important. Neither of us, by the way, are getting paid from Zoom, Redtail, GoToMeeting. This is the world we live in. It is complex. It's overwhelming a lot of times because there's so much tech. But the fact that you love your CRM and it's become a tool for you to be more productive is the key. If your CRM is not doing that for you, you're doing it wrong. And it's really your own fault
100%.
because there are a plethora of options out there. I've used a dozen. I don't want to go on. I've used a dozen different CRMs and have thought about creating my own. Goodness gracious, keep that off. Let's put that on the back burner. Okay. But the reality is, like, for advisors, like, you have some great options, and it's the integration of those. It's the use. How do you use this to better fulfill what it is you need to accomplish every single day and be, working in your sweet spot? So, wonderful comments on this, Colin. As you've been more productive, it's allowed you to grow. How are you growing with your YouTube channel and other content outreaches? What are you doing that's actually working to help keep your balance and grow at the same time?
I mean, that's a great question too. And for me, and I think for a lot of advisors here, especially since COVID, people have really wanted to figure out, okay, where is the best place for me to live? What is the ideal situation for my family? What does the ideal situation for my work look like? And, the country is very mobile. We're able to figure out what we want to do. For me, to be able to grow, I had to specialize even more. So a lot of advisors out there will take clients from every different area, whether it's doctors, sales executives, corporate executives, business owners, retirees, and every single one of those has different financial planning needs and has different things that they're dealing with. So for me, I needed to narrow down my focus, which is why I work with business owners. I own a business. And I work with business owners and their families, because most business owners are going through the same things, different ways, but they're going through the same things. So I'm able to create kind of repeatable systems to be able to build out financial planning for those people. Then what I said is, all right, in order to grow, there's only really three ways, I think, to do this. One is to bring on more clients, hire more staff, become a larger company. And with that becomes more meetings to have meetings, which I didn't want to do any of that. And the second way, which I think a lot of advisors will do, is kind of move up and work with higher and higher net worth people with more and more complex problems to charge more and more to those people. And of course, I do some of that, but at the same time, I really like working with the demographic that I work with. And the competition there, when you're moving up higher and higher net worth, you're competing with private banks and family offices and the high-end teams. And there's so much competition for that when there's so much advice that's still needed for so many other people. So rather than doing that, I said, okay, I've got to figure out a way to give my advice to more people at once. Because when I'm working one-on-one, there's only a certain amount of hours in the day. So however many hours I want to devote to this business is what I've got. But if I can figure out a way to give my advice to more people at the same time, I can potentially bring in more revenue while not increasing the time that I'm spending in the business. And so that kind of was the genesis for the YouTube channel, which is one of the fastest growing social media, networks out there. It's part of Google, so it's part of search. And for me, being kind of an educator, a coach, a guide, it's a good way for me to be able to get across concepts to tens and hundreds and thousands and 100,000s of people. And I say it one time, and I can share it within my own community. I can share it within my clients, my friends, the CPAs that I work with, they can share it. So my message isn't said once, but it's said thousands and thousands and thousands of times, which also builds up trust within my community. And of course, the advertising revenue that comes in from the YouTube channel is great, and it's growing because the people that generally want financial advice, well, that's who advertisers want to reach. So they're willing to pay more for a target like a financial advisor might have. So I think that's really important. But then additionally, when I started in this business way back in 2000, we were doing the big fancy steak dinners and bringing in people. And it's kind of the same thing, right? You're teaching in front of a big group, but again, you're only saying it that one time. So yes, you were doing kind of a group educational setting, but it wasn't repeatable. So what I've additionally done is said, okay, after the free stuff that people can watch on YouTube, if they're looking for a little bit more, they can join me on a paid webinar. And where they, if you have to pay to get on there, you have to have some skin in the game, right? And so you want to make it enough that it's a little bit painful, but not too much that it alienates too many people. And so people can come in there and they can get kind of a high level. This is how Colin does financial planning. These are some important things that I should consider. These are some things that I should be doing. And they can take that information and they can implement it all on their own. And I can do these webinars as often as I would like and reach as many people as I would like. And then there will be some of those people who say, hey, Colin, this is great, but I don't have the time to implement this on my own. Can I hire you to help me? And then, of course, at that point, you're moving into more custom one-on-one planning that's more time intensive. So then you're moving up the revenue scale. So that's kind of the thought process behind how I'm growing without spending more time on the business.
So many advisors struggle with marketing. They're not taught marketing. We're not given anything other than the one card system and get some referrals. Back in the day when we got started, obviously things have changed. Now it's jump on social media, but you can only post what it is that your compliance department says you can post, and on and on. There's all of these challenges for marketing. And then I think some of it is just thinking like a marketer, like a business owner would for a business, instead of, well, if I build it, they will come mentality. What I love about what you've shown here is that you've created a space for which people can find you free. They can pay a little bit, and you're making money from this. It's still a venture, but eventually, if they're not ready yet, they might be, and they'll follow up with you, and you'll be the first person they think of because they've been following you for a while. That they can interact. I mean, you can do this on YouTube. You can do this on LinkedIn. You can do this on Facebook, wherever it is you choose to do that. But you're exactly right. You've got to have a niche. Some even have called this, let's see, is Michael Port. He teaches about marketing. He's an incredible marketer. He says you need to find a fractal. It's even more narrow than a niche. Like, find your group that you can influence. And I was talking to an influencer just yesterday, Matt Halloran. Shout out to Matt Halloran. We're talking about, he's a podcaster and he creates podcasts and helps you to do that. But he was talking about how a lot of advisors really struggle with the marketing because of the lack of abundance. That this mentality just, for whatever reason, doesn't exist in who I market to. When you're exactly right, if you can narrow down, find a niche or a fractal that you can influence, you can be that influencer too. They're going to self-refer. They're going to come to you. So I love it. I love what you're doing. I love that you're an advisor who has experience, plus you have some ingenuity to make these things happen. This is definitely where I help and try to push advisors to. If you want to balance your life and you want to have growth, there's ways that you can do one-to-many. There's ways that you can have social media influence and still have this one-on-one custom. So a phenomenal way of methodology that you have here. So I love it. But let's talk about some of the struggles. What do you think are some of the struggles that you're dealing with as a solo advisor, even though you have virtual help, even though you've got some one-to-many and some one-on-one methodology set up? What are some of the struggles of keeping your balance while you're growing this business?
There are a lot of them. There are a lot of struggles. There's one thing that I think that I'm getting over, which I'm trying to instill in my two daughters, my two young girls, about not being afraid to fail. And, you can be a perfectionist. You can want to have everything correct, and you can want to, get 100 on every test and have all A's. But the real learning happens when you try to do something that's out of your comfort zone and it doesn't work. How do you come back from that? What do you learn from that? How do you make it better? Or do you just abandon it and move on? And I think for me and probably a lot of other advisors, like for me, starting a business, first of all, and leaving the Wall Street Investment Bank and saying, I wonder whether any clients will come and work with me. Like that was a really big struggle that I had to get over because I thought I needed that giant name behind me, providing me credibility. Well, I didn't really need that because what most people want is they want to work with someone they know, like, and trust. So, I mean, that you kind of have that within there. So that was something that I had to, get over. Then it was when you go online, right? And you put yourself out there, you're open to ridicule by everyone. And it's not fun. It's like the troll thing is real and people are out there. And it's great when, sometimes there's clients, there's people that I know who are defending me in different areas, which is really cool to see that the community is so strong that people will do that. But just having being able to kind of open myself up to the public for scrutiny, I think is something that was a really hard thing for me to do. And I said, I wanted to do it, but I kept finding reasons to not do it until I finally said, I just have to put myself out there and start talking into the camera, start being more comfortable in front of big groups. Because a lot of advisors, we got into this business because we like advising people. We like financial planning. We're planning people. And that's honestly more of an introvert type thing. And being like the people who are great at sales, a lot of them aren't as good at financial planning. And the ones that are really good at financial planning aren't really good at sales. And so if we kind of figure out ways to manage those things and work them together, I think we'll be better as a community. But the big thing for me was being able to get over the hurdle of being able to put myself out there. Then secondarily is when things do break, don't be afraid that they are going to break. Like it's going to happen. Things aren't going to be smooth. And the process of figuring out, all right, what went wrong? How can we fix that is what creates the systems so that it doesn't happen again. And every time that something happens like that, the system gets built stronger for a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. And so like one of the things that I said is I'm going to build this out and I'm going to figure out what breaks. And as I do different things and things break, then I'm able to fix that, moving forward. And when you're using a lot of different parts of technology like schedulers and marketing services and social media services and financial planning portals and you're linked up with custodians and you've got emails and this stuff all has to kind of be in harmony, working together to have it really functioning. So it takes a lot of time. So I don't want to say like when you do one-to-many or when you're doing things virtually and you're creating more time for yourself, there are things that all of a sudden start taking up that time that you just freed up for yourself. So you do, and sometimes you might think, oh, well, it's only 5 minutes. This is only 15 minutes. This is only 20 minutes. And then you start adding it up and it's 6 hours worth of time. And so did it really make sense to do this if I'm spending more time on the back end kind of figuring things out than it's actually doing to help the business, grow the audience, grow the revenue, things like that. So there's a couple things that I think are kind of bigger picture struggles that I've had.
And you bring up one I think most advisors really struggle with. They tell me a lot is putting themselves out there. Clients who I say, man, you need to stop regurgitating what the broker dealer is posting on their LinkedIn and do something personal and start being you. Yeah, I know I need to do that. 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, same thing. I'm seeing the struggle with so many advisors because I think it's one thing to say compliance actually really won't let me, but it's another to say compliance really won't let me, but they know they could if they tried. If they just need to put themselves out there. I dislike hearing my voice so much that when I practice speaking and I practice reading my audiobook, I just cringe. This is not unique to me. It's because we don't hear ourselves the way that we hear it when it's recorded. It comes through our cheekbones and up into our ears, right? That's how the sound travels. But when you hear it recorded 6 inches from your face, the sound waves are different. You're like, that's not my voice. When we see ourselves on video, we're like, do I really look like that? Like we're in such a world that is focused on what we look like, how we sound. Am I perfect? No one is perfect. In fact, people like characters with flaws. We're human. I'm just thinking about my own social. I still have the old notion that I can't post something unless I look perfect, and it looks perfect. But the reality is people are relating more on social to those who are not 100% perfect with everything. This is why the iPhone, like I know more people recording videos on YouTube with iPhone or doing quick audio, from their voice recorder nowadays, just on the fly, because it relates. It's relatable, and they relate to people that way. And I've even heard some incredible marketers, Russell Brunson, talking about the reason why DC Comics, was it DC or Marvel? I think it was DC that kind of lost the market share to Marvel, is because Marvel made characters that had flaws, that weren't all superheroes, right there, right? Like that guy right behind you, the Iron Man mask right behind you. Exactly. They weren't superhuman sent from heaven to save the world. They had flaws. And, I'm with you. Like putting yourself out there, that's tough. And I'm an advisor. I just want people to come to me. But the reality is, when you put yourself out there, you will attract the people that you attract because of what your character, your personality is. And that's just natural. But now you can do this on a much higher plane. I know
You're
we can
so
go
right
on
with that. I was thinking about this as you were saying it. I was listening to you and thinking we could have 10 advisors all saying the exact same great financial planning strategy. And they all look different, and they're all in a different background. Some of them might be wearing full suits. Someone might be like me, some in t-shirts, and you're going to attract your tribe. And when you're out there on the internet, there are people that want to work with someone who like sounds like me, looks like me, like whatever, they're attracted to me. And there's other people that don't. And it took me for a while because I want everyone to like me to realize that's not going to happen. And that somebody else, like the people that they attract are perfect for them. And sometimes I've thought about how in this industry, you could probably apply the 80-20 rule, and that there are a number of clients that probably are with somebody else that should be with me, and maybe some that are with me that should be with somebody else. I don't know that, but like in order to really serve people really well, we should focus on the people that we help the best.
100%. And that's part of you. As you're putting that out, those individuals will be attracted to your character. So I love that 100%. And Colin, I know we could spend hours on all these pieces. Tell our listeners where they can follow you and they can see what you're doing on YouTube, how you're using this. What's some of your handles there on YouTube or now Instagram?
Sure. So on Instagram, it's Celestial Wealth MGMT. And we're putting more work into Instagram. So hopefully we'll see how that, plays out. The YouTube channel is See the Forest Through the Trees. And we started with 50 some subscribers. I was at 50 subscribers a year ago at this time. And so growing that out. So, go check it out, subscribe if you want to watch those things. And, if you're watching this and you're a business owner, you're listening to this in your podcast on a drive, you can go to celestialwm.com/free-training-video. It's in the resources area, and you can learn more about how I think about financial planning for business owners.
Love it. And I think other advisors need to be following what you're doing as well. They need examples of people who are keeping their balance, making family, their health, spirituality, important part of their life, but being able to grow the business. Growth doesn't have to be with the numbers of your team in your office, as you've proven, growth can be, the reach that you have with your clients. So love this concept. I know we could spend a lot more time on this, Colin. You've been generous with yours. Thank you for making time to be here on the podcast. And any last things you would tell advisors, any last tips that you would say, hey, yeah, do this, get out there, so you can keep a balanced growth?
I heard this yesterday. Show up every day, be present. I try to do that in my family life. It's hard. There's a lot of distractions, but show up and be where you are. And, if you do that every day, I think that'll be great. And again, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. The sooner that you can do that, the better. I look back at the videos I did 2 years ago and 3 years ago. Oh my gosh. But that was the starting point. And they always say like the first 100 videos you do are for your first 100 subscribers.
Right.
So that's a lot for a little bit of people, but like you got to do it in order to keep getting better with it. And hopefully if you guys are watching the stuff that I'm putting out there, you think I'm getting better with what I'm putting out there.
Yeah, so good. Thank you, listeners, for hanging on, for listening, and for getting this golden content. By the time you get this, we're past 100 episodes. We're past kind of the mark where most podcasts kind of give up. They quit. They're done. They haven't seen, the spot. So I'm glad that we can have this reaches because of listenership. And thank you for your support. Thank you, Colin, for being here. If you want to share this, share, subscribe. That advisor who needs to hear about getting out there and about not being afraid to do some marketing through YouTube and other places, this is for them. So thanks again, Colin, for being here. Thanks everyone else for listening. And remember, live life on purpose.